if you could introduce yourselves and if you would share your unique approach to helping others with their storytelling. Where do you make the most impact? And actually, if you could also share what you find the most rewarding about your process and what you help people accomplish.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me, Barbara and Nancy. I'm so excited to be here with all of you and with Alicia and Nicole as well. It's amazing seeing all of your faces. And when I don't see your faces, great seeing your names and seeing so many people to talk about your story. So that really excites me. So I've always been a storyteller my whole life. And I'm the founder of a company called Storybeat Studio. We help leaders get seen and heard through PR and storytelling programs for subject matter experts. So I used to work for Oprah and CBS News. I've been in the media industry for more than 20 years. And I am a trusted resource in authentic storytelling and mass communication in particular. So I am very focused on helping people bring out their story, building on a solid foundation, and sharing their depth and wisdom with a larger audience, building a larger platform for their work. So I see a lot of women and people questioning the value of their story and not putting themselves out there, being afraid to share or feeling afraid of being judged. And that's something that I take very personally. And I want to see more people feeling confident and comfortable in sharing their story. And not only for the impact it has on others, but also for the impact it has on you when you choose to tell your story. It can be very uplifting and empowering just to see yourself sharing something that you've been maybe holding too close for too long. So we offer high-touch one-on-one PR services and group programs to help people tell their story. And where I make the most impact, I would say, is helping leaders and experts see and then share their unique story with mass audiences. So helping them shape their message so that it can be understood and used more widely. So helping you make a bigger impact and become more recognized for your work. And so the other sort of byproduct of the impact that comes is when I put together groups of women, I see the impact of their connections that they make, because ultimately storytelling is about connection. You want to connect with another person. You want to connect with another group of people. It's about connection. And that's personally what I care a lot about, is the connections that happen between people, especially around authentic storytelling, when people really see you and hear you and understand who you are and what you know, and you get to know each other through that. So those are some of the impacts that I have. And I just love seeing my clients win. I love seeing them succeed and building their confidence. So that's a little bit about me.
Love that. Nicole?
Well, you're a tough act to follow, Lisa. But a lot of what you said resonates with me. And so hi, everybody. My name's Nicole Mastrangelo, and I am the founder of a company called The Daily Drip. It's a media platform where we have articles, podcasts, video content, all for the modern businesswoman. It's a lifestyle platform that helps provide really engaging enrichment content to help them on their way. What makes our media platform unique, more unique than some of the other mass media platforms, is that all of the content, everything you read, watch, or listen to, is created by women just like you. They're all local professionals in our market. Some of them are small business owners. Some of them are startups and founders. Some of them are CEOs, but they are from all walks of life, all stages in their business. And the reason why I created the Daily Drip was because, over the last 20 years or so, the business landscape has changed. And today, if you are in business, you're in the media business, whether you like it or not. And if you are a business owner or a business leader, you are now a de facto content creator. But what happened along the way is nobody really learned how to be fluent in this new communication language. This is the new language of business. This is the new language of leadership. And so with the Daily Drip, not only do we have a platform to showcase local industry experts, local female leaders, we also have a thought leadership program where we teach established and emerging business leaders how to become thought leaders, how to build a digital presence, how to expand your reach, tell your story, boost your mission, whatever that may be, philanthropic, for profit, or maybe it's just personal. And I would echo what Lisa said. In my experience now, 3 years with working with today we have more than 4,000 audience members for the Daily Drip, and we have about 40 thought leaders creating content with us. And in my experience in working with all of them in various different capacities, the one thing I've realized is they are all impact driven. That's the one common thread between everybody. What motivates them to tell their story is impact. But what I think is the most rewarding and surprising for all of them is how much this process impacts them. It is a very cathartic, invigorating, energizing adventure to create your digital character and share your story with others and get that response and connection and community in the digital world, in this hybrid landscape we find ourselves in. And I think for me, watching people say to me, I created this for them, whoever them is, but I didn't realize how much I needed it to go through that process of creating it, whatever that is, the podcast, the blog, and this and that. And it's just been incredibly rewarding helping these business women find their voice, amplify their voice, overcome their imposter syndrome, get outside their comfort zone. And for us, because this is so different for so many people, for many, this is not their natural inclination, creating content, creating video, creating articles. Doing it in community is incredibly powerful. There's a tremendous amount of support that comes when you create in community. And that translates into the digital world. I see them rally around each other's digital pieces of content. I see them rally around each other at their events and in different initiatives in their work. So it's a beautiful thing to be a part of. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Nicole, Carlin, and Petula, who are on the call today from the Daily Drip. Thank you for joining us, guys.
Great. Alicia, bring us home. Thanks.
Okay, so my world is pretty niche, actually. So I work with nonfiction authors, and about 95% of them are in the business world. So the book that they're hoping to write or are writing is going to be sitting on the business shelf. So through that lens and from that perspective, when we're talking about story, I'm looking at content. So the content that you are looking to bring out into the marketplace, right? And when you're looking at that from a business perspective, it's usually something that you've proven the resonance for. You know that if you're looking to publish a book, you've already proven the resonance to a degree, and it's something that is replicable somehow. It's something you can teach your reader or your audience so they can move on and improve something in their business or life. So I work with first-time and experienced authors, and they come to me at different points in the publishing path, probably in equal measure. The first group kind of knows that they need to and really want to write a book. And sometimes it's even that not having a book is holding them back from hitting that kind of next inflection point that they want to take in their career. But they have no idea how to go about doing this because you hear about the word publishing and it's just such a jumble, and they have not yet figured out what their publishing path is going to be. Then the next group, we'll focus in on that first group today. The second group is people that have figured out their publishing path, and it could be self-publishing, could be hybrid publishing, could be they have a traditional publishing contract in their hand, and then they want to understand how to better put together a marketing plan and then execute a marketing plan for the book launch. So those are sort of the two categories that people come to me, different places. For the first-time author, which I think maybe is more for today, one of the things we start to look at initially, and it kind of is where Barbara and Nancy kind of brainstormed the idea for this thing, is this a book, right? And if it's a book, is it the right book? So when I'm working with authors, as I said, this is kind of niche, this stuff, but I'm hoping there's some value in here. When we're looking at it, whether or not it's a book, we're looking at the body of work you have, kind of how developed and proven it is. Are you bringing something new to the world? In business, you're probably not going to invent a category, but you're coming up with a fresh approach into the world that you want to share with people. And then the last piece is why you, right? So I don't say that to intimidate it. And are you the best voice to bring this message to the market? So, and that comes from your story. Like, what have you lived that allows you to help other people bring this to market? So if all of that lines up, and I don't want to make it sound like it's so elite, because oftentimes if somebody comes to me, it does line up, because you're not going to come to me and say, oh, I thought this morning, hey, I'd love to write a book, right? So at that point, it would come into, finding a book proposal and then helping the individual find their publishing path. I say that in one sentence. It's not that easy, but that's the next step, right? So I would say where this work, I think we overlap a lot, Nicole and Lisa and I, in terms of where is this particularly helpful. I think, for all of us, and I know Lisa was saying it too, it's helping people understand how to frame their message in the marketplace. And I think where I see people kind of make mistakes sometimes is they forget to meet the audience where they are, and they jump right into their content, as opposed to kind of finding that pain point with your audience. I hate pain point is so overused, right? But finding that pain point of your audience, reminding them of it, and then telling them how your content is going to better solve, it was going to help solve that problem, make their life better. And then the other thing I think is kind of helpful, and Barbara used this word at some point, but demystifying. So we're demystifying this jumble that people don't understand. And I think the rewarding piece of that is when you do take all this jumble apart and demystify it for people, you give people permission and the belief that they can do it. And I know both Nicole and Lisa said the same thing. Like, once you see people empowered to go forward and give their message, is super rewarding. And of course, like, really throwing a thing out there, but like the ultimate thing for me is that time when the book shows up in the mail, like this dream you had to this finished product. And I will tell you, it never gets old. I mean, they're never my books, and it still strikes me. So that's the work that I do.
And, it's interesting, Alicia, because I would agree with you. I think all three of you complement one another so well, and you overlap in so many instances. And one of the words that was mentioned earlier, maybe before we began recording, was, imposter syndrome is often, an obstacle or a barrier that prevents people from telling their story. So can you share with us, each of you, Nicole, Alicia, and Lisa, what do you see other than imposter syndrome? What are the obstacles that prevent people, especially women, from developing and sharing their stories? And where do we get stuck?
Do you want me to go first? Oh, okay, I didn't want to jump in. Okay. It's funny because you said besides imposter syndrome, but that is one of the biggest. So I can't answer that question without giving imposter syndrome a moment.
Sure.
We have had CEOs write tremendous pieces, have incredible moments on our podcast, and when their clips get released, they don't share them. They don't reshare them with their networks. They're not tagging colleagues. And the biggest reason is because they are worried, at least in my world and with these business women, they're worried that they're going to come off like a know-it-all. Like, who am I to act as an authority and represent everyone else, all my colleagues, all my peers? Who am I to do that? And so one of the things we talk about a lot is giving that a moment. Who are you? You are the CEO of XYZ. You are the principal managing partner of XYZ. You've been in this industry for how many decades? You've achieved how many milestones in your career? And so I think one of the things we work on is unhooking from that idea that if you're sharing your story and expertise, you are representing a whole demographic, because you're not speaking on other people's behalf. You're joining the conversation, and in some cases starting the conversation. So you're not by any means representing anyone else but you. And, you know, normally when we go through that exercise and we really kind of unpack all that, it helps tremendously with the imposter syndrome. To think of it as I'm joining a conversation, I'm jumping in on this versus I'm speaking on behalf of. The other thing I think I see oftentimes, because I'm dealing with business women, is this idea of their personal brand versus the company brand. That gets very commingled, and there's a lot of confusion around where do I start. And so the first thing we start with is understanding and defining, you know, what is content. And so at the Daily Drip, we operate from this universal definition, which is content is information presented with a purpose. So that could be your business card, it could be your website, it could be your book, it could be your program, it could be your social media post. And so we kind of help our thought leaders delineate between content that's a product, like a book, like a course, like a program, and content that's promotional, and content that is personal branding, storytelling. And so I think being able to compartmentalize the different types of content, where they come into play, when and how, is also one of the biggest roadblocks we help people navigate so that they can start creating the right content in the right order, in the right stage.
Great points. Alicia, how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to underscore imposter syndrome and confidence again. You know what I mean? And I think it probably tends to be more of a women's issue, but it's not exclusively a women's issue. I can tell a fast story that when my oldest daughter started her PhD program at University of Michigan a few years ago, the full cohort of newly minted candidates was in the room. And the person walked into this lecture hall and wrote imposter syndrome in all capital letters on the board, and then turned around and said, every single person here thinks they were the mistake in admissions. I'm here to tell you it's not true.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. Like, I thought that was an amazing way to start this program, right? But anyway, so it's shared by, it's, you know, it's shared by everybody. A second, like, I'm going to bring up one more mindset that's a problem, and then also something that's not a problem, it's an obstacle that people kind of put in their own path, right? The next thing is, and it's Nicole, you kind of alluded to this as well, but it's just discomfort with self-promotion. And those things are deeply related, but not exactly the same thing. And self-promotion can be self-promotion, but in the world of book marketing, it's also asking people for help. And you cannot be successful launching a book if you're going to do it by yourself, right? So these are the two things. So a lot of the work that I do with clients is trying to shift those mindsets enough that you can do what you need to do to be successful. You know, sometimes it is fake it to make it kind of thing, you know what I mean? But you're just trying to give yourself a reason to step over the obstacle. The third obstacle that people come to me with, and I hate to say, but there's a reality to it in the book world, right? And it's the dreaded word of your platform, right? And I think of platform, I define it, I think, a little bit differently than some people do. I talk about your platform being the thing you stand on that allows your voice to be heard in the market. And your platform is a series of what I call planks. And you could have a really, and as an example of planks, you might have a really dedicated social media following. That's a great plank. You might have a very robust speaking career. That's great. You might own your own company and have access to get your message out through whatever vehicles your company uses, your book out that way. That's great. You might have a really powerful network that really cares about your message getting out there. That's part of your platform. So I would never want, people talk about, well, I don't have a platform, I don't have a network. You do. I would never want somebody to say, I can't do this because I don't have a platform. I would just let the platform kind of guide where you need to be at that moment in time, right? So that's an obstacle. The three quick things I would say, 3 to 4 very quickly, for overcoming these things, and these are so light and pithy. I'm going to become like the queen of pithy by the end of this call, but it's declare your intention, right? There's something about saying something out loud that creates accountability. There's a book called Take the Stairs in Pairs, and it's all about creating accountability for yourself. The next one is, and this is a women thing more, but if an opportunity arises, say yes, like raise your hand. And Barbara was telling me a story that she had learned along the way as an example of that if men and women both see a job posting for a job they want, there's a lot of research out there, and I've seen the heads nodding, probably a lot of you have seen it, where men will apply for that job if they can tick off 60%, 50% of the boxes. Mm-hmm. Women will not apply for that job unless they can tick off 90. So there's something about just raising your hand and throwing yourself out there, even when you're uncomfortable. I went back to work after 9 years with my 4 daughters. I was scared out of my mind. The only thing was different was I said yes to things. Probably did a terrible job. I was scared out of my mind, but I just said yes. And the last thing I would say here, really honestly, is just believe in your message. There was something that came through in my email one time, and it said the magic bullet for book sales. And I was like, shoot, I should have written that. And I certainly should know what it is, right? So I took the bait and I'm clicking through, and the message was pithy, but meaningful. It said, believe in yourself, believe in your message, because if you believe in yourself, you're not selling, you're helping. You're advocating. So I know it sounds small, but it's what actually allows a lot of my clients the courage to get over that kind of hurdle of self-promotion. But and one more thing, I'm so sorry, but there's one other thing I thought was super meaningful to me. It said, we all as women, like I know for myself, that when I'm idle or when I'm just daydreaming, it's almost like my brain goes into a screensaver mode, right? And then somebody said this, I think it was Marie Forleo or somebody. And it's like, at that moment in time is when the bad thoughts come in. Like, I'm a fraud. I'm stupid. Don't do this. That's a dumb idea, whatever. But as soon as you get back to doing your work, all of that goes away. So there's something about holding on to your passion and just staying focused. So the obstacles are real, but there are things you can do to just try to push yourself over them. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I think I went on too long there. I apologize, but
no, those were
that was the great point to apologize.
Yeah.
Oh no, women don't apologize. So no, never apologize.
Yes, women apologize all the time. So.
Yeah. Lisa.
I love that. Don't apologize. It's awesome, Alicia. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I work with established subject matter experts one-on-one and emerging ones in groups. But I see commonalities between them. I see a lot of people that overthink, that sort of overthink and don't start. I hear a lot of fear of judgment and criticism, internal criticism and shame, which Alicia and Nicole both addressed. But I would share that you're not alone in that. There's a reason why we're saying this, because we see this every day. So know that if you're questioning, if you're feeling judgment, you're afraid, if I share my story, someone will criticize it, or I'll feel embarrassed, or someone will laugh at me. Those are very common thoughts and feelings. So just know you're not alone in that. I think it's really important. And I actually think it comes from a flaw in our culture that we actually don't validate each other enough. We don't validate. We're more likely to criticize ourselves and criticize others. Oh, why did she say that? Or, oh, she's oversharing or this. And just try to quiet those voices, right? And, try to quiet your own inner critic as well as your critic for others, so that you're giving space to others as well as for yourself. So be for others what you want to see for yourself, and share their stories, amplify them, comment on what they're sharing, share their book, send their book out to a group of friends. That's a good way to start. But so, yeah, I see a lot of that. And when I worked for Oprah, everyone, Oprah always remarked on this, that people always ask after they do an interview, did I do a good job? Am I good enough? And I find that we ask that before we do things, am I good enough? As well as afterwards, did I do a good job? And we don't think we did. And we're waiting for validation. So try to validate more, but also accept that sometimes we're not going to be validated. Sometimes we share a story, no one's going to comment. Don't quit just because no one's commenting on it or no one's seemingly responding. So it takes time. You're building a relationship with the public in some way. It has to be cultivated over time. So when you believe in it, when you believe in your story, just, try to keep going. So another point I'd like to make too is that a lot of, another issue I see with my clients, both in groups and one-on-one, is that you want to be clear on what success looks like for you. Define success. You're not just sort of like throwing spaghetti at the wall. You want to have an intention with, I would define it as, you want a big intention, right? You want to light a path forward that you can follow. It's a light, it's a commitment. It's not a goal. It's a belief, a path that you can follow, and you can course correct along the way if you're not sort of adhering to it. So you want to define what success looks like for you for sharing your story. Is it just cathartic? Do you just want to feel better? Do you just want to write it in your notebook? Do you want to share it with an audience? And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Do you want this to be a book? Do you want it to be a sales tool? Do you want your book to be a sales tool? Or do you want it to be something that moves the needle and opens up a conversation with the public in a larger way? So be really clear about what it is that success looks like for you and have an intention so that you're not just getting advice. Start posting on LinkedIn. That's where everybody is right now. And you're like, well, why? Why should I do that? Is that aligned with what success looks like for me? And also my nature, right? My nervous system, does it align for me? So you're starting to ask those questions. So you want to build on a solid foundation, and don't expect growth overnight. Like, it happens over time. So those are some of the issues that I see and how we start to crack them open and solve them.
There's so many, again, different paths I could go down based on all of what you just said. And I think that there were some really good practical steps in what you mentioned. But I'm curious if you can each comment on, competition. There's a lot of competition for stories. Can you share with us how you help clients make their stories or story more compelling?
Anybody?
Alicia, how about you go kick us off?
I was going to say anybody. I just want to say one really, Lisa, one thing you just reminded me of is I'm going to throw out another pithyism. You guys can all shut up, mute me afterwards. But it's like the old adage that 10 years of hard work and perspiration makes you look like an overnight success, right? So the people who are out there and are cracking forward, very rarely did they just start yesterday. So just, you have to keep that in mind. Honestly, we haven't talked a lot about to make your message heard better, more compelling. And I think we've all touched on it in different ways. But the first one is know who your audience is. And this is kind of everywhere. Your content can't be for everybody. And one of the, if you go into a publisher and they say, who's your book for? And you say, my book's for everybody, they're going to close the door. Because you really have to know who your audience really is and where they are. In terms of making it more compelling, I would say, remember, I talked about, I think I said it at the top of the call, how to bring your audience in. I keep doing this because it's a funnel, right? But yeah. So start with where your audience is. And again, often in my world, there's a pain point. There's a problem that you're able to solve. So understand the problem you're solving and then bring them in. So you have to think about it, not only that, but from your audience's perspective. So if they were up at night Googling this problem, that's where you start. And the biggest mistake I find people make is they're so eager to jump in and they have a name that they've trademarked for their solution that they start saying, use the blankety blank trademark name, and nobody knows what that is. So to be compelling, you've got to pull people down that. I'll stop doing that funnel. And then the last thing for she who just went way over on her time is be succinct and be practiced in your message. I think those are all very important. So that's what I would toss in there.
Alicia, I love your conversation and your hand gestures. I'm Italian. Keep them coming.
Y'all got to stop. It's all bad.
And I'm a big fan of less is more. So Nicole, how about you?
Yeah.
How do you help your members be more compelling?
Well, I think the very fact of the matter is that none of us are really doing anything that revolutionary, right? We are all one of that. We are in among our peers, among a world of people who are mentors, coaches, leaders, advisors. Insert professional title here. We are one of, right? And yet there are many that are connecting with their niche audience, engaging with them. And so why is that? And if we take, for example, a financial advisor, or even better, a real estate agent, right? We all, if I say the word real estate agent, there are faces that are coming to your minds. I know that for certain. There are people that you know that are real estate agents in your professional network, in your family, in your friendships, right? And those are the first people that come to mind. But if we actually dissected your network, you know more than those people. But why do those people come to your mind? It's because they built mind share in you. So this idea of mind share is that those people who are constantly posting about where they're at, what they're doing, who they're with, they're constantly representing and associating whatever that message is, in this case for a real estate agent, that they are a professional in the marketplace and they're a top-notch agent and they're going to help you navigate whatever challenges. They're constantly showing up as that version of themselves in your presence, so that you have now associated them that way. So that when I say the word real estate agent, or when I say financial advisor, they've built up so much mind share, it's the first person you think of. And when you do have that tipping point in your pain, in your pain points, when you do need to sell your house, buy a piece of property, help your parent, help your child, you naturally think of those people. And so, as we've heard today, it's a long game. It's a journey of building mind share, of constantly showing up and talking about your core message. And that's what makes you stand out among all the others. And so for me, I'm not doing anything revolutionary. I'm one of God only knows how many. Millions of people are helping people build their digital presence and their brand, their personal brand, their professional brands. So why have I been able to emerge in just 3 short years with an audience of more than 4,000 businesswomen? How was I able to do that? I was talking about it ad nauseum. There was no way somebody could see me or engage with me without putting the 2 dots together. And then when the pain point got burning enough to the point where they couldn't stand it and they wanted to do something about it, I was the one they knew, liked, and trusted. And I was the first one that came to mind.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you for that. And Lisa, how about anything else you want to add here on this?
Yeah, I love that, Nicole. And that actually dovetails with something I wanted to say. So I love that. It's about sort of the personal branding, right? What do you want to be known for? And I'll talk a little bit about that. But it makes me think of a story. When I quit Facebook, I quit using Facebook. I decided I was done with Facebook. And a friend messaged me and said, how will I know what you're up to if you're not on Facebook anymore? And I said, wait, I have a phone number. I have, you can just remember me. You can call me, you can text me, whatever, email me. There's other ways for us to keep in touch. But what I realized from that is something I think about a lot, is that unfortunately, I wish it weren't true, but unfortunately people forget we exist. We want to be memorable. I wish I were more memorable than my friend who could have texted me or called me instead of just kind of like passively seeing my updates on Facebook. But that's the reality. People forget. And especially if you're a business owner, or you want to be known in your field, or you could lose your job as an executive even, you want to be remembered. And sometimes you have to remind people that you exist, right? So that is what, why, to Nicole's point, why we want to work on being known for who we are and what we do, and to remind people of it. So, I would say don't feel pressure though to add to the noise. If everyone's talking about the eclipse, like we were this week, you don't need to post about your eclipse experience necessarily, unless you're an astrophysicist, or if you can make a connection to your body of work that makes it clear why you're talking about it, right? So you want to you don't want to just add to all this noise. You want to hone in on your unique area of expertise that you want to be known for, so that when the news is talking about the eclipse, they're not calling Lisa, who knows nothing about it. They're calling, the astrophysicist, but they're calling you when they want to talk specifically about storytelling, right? Or marketing, or building your platform. So that kind of thing. So that's what you want to do, is you want to be clear on who you are, what you do, who it's for. And then you can use the news actually to provide a hook, so that whatever's going on in the news, you can tie it back into your work, but it has to have a tie-in. It shouldn't just be you talking about things that you're not wanting to be known for.
I would add to that too. You could tie it into your work, or you could tie it into your persona. So I actually did a solar eclipse post, and I am not a scientist. Let me make that disclaimer perfectly clear. But one of the facets of my personal brand and my persona is that I am a working mother. And so often I share my son. And this was my son's first eclipse. And so earlier that day, I had documented and shared a presentation. I had a speaking engagement. I got a lot of activity, but then I had to pick him up from school. And there he was with his sunglasses, looking up and so excited and pointing. And I captured it. And I said, from a meeting to school pickup, and we managed to catch the eclipse. Do you know I got more engagement on that than I did about my speaking speaking engagement? Why? Because it's what humanizes me, and people really connect to what humanizes.
Right. Well, and you talked about, my personal story, my professional story. I feel the same way, even on LinkedIn. When I bring my daughter into something, everyone's like, oh my God. And I'm like, okay, I'm doing these other posts, but everyone focuses on that one. So really being authentic though, right? And finding a way to bring that in and making it relevant is important. And I guess as long as you're getting more traffic, ultimately, when you do have something that's more business focused, it might help you get more traffic. So I guess it does serve your purpose. Although I do hear people say, God, LinkedIn's turning into Facebook and I can't stand it. So I think I do feel like you need to be a little careful there, right? Sometimes.
There's another pithyism that says, positioning, which is sort of how you define yourself in the market. Positioning is not something you make up. It's the consequence of who you already are, right? So it's that speaking to the point of authenticity.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, that's so true.
That is so true. I love that.
And I think from what I've heard, Alicia, you said, define what success, and everyone's talking about define what success is. The problem is we're so defined by algorithms and everything else, what success is. And so you want to remain authentic, but you want to play the game if you want to try to get your message out. So I feel like one question I would have is, how do you balance that? Because you've got to maintain some continuity to remain, present and to get more reach and to get more impact. So how do you do that? But then these different platforms all work differently. I mean, do you decide, that what you share and how you share it? And Lisa, this was your post today on LinkedIn, which was so great. The medium in the message, the medium defines the message, right? So, if it's a book or an article or blog or a podcast, it's, a TED Talk, how do you craft that message? What do you need to figure out about which platform and how to do it? And I don't know, Alicia, I guess jump in.
Yeah. To answer your first question quickly, I would go back and reiterate what Lisa said earlier, is I think you just have to understand your, I'll say your brand, but what differentiates you in the market? What's your lane? And stay there within reason. As a marketer, I love things to be singular, but life isn't singular. So you can be more than one thing. And I think you're right. I agree with everything everybody said. You can be personal, limited, you know what I mean? But always kind of know your limit, speak to it, which is what, Lisa said. In terms of considering a platform, I guess I would suggest a couple of acid tests, and it goes back to this. We've all said this, is understand what your goals are, right? So are you doing this for fun? And I'm just reiterating what's been said. All right. Are you doing this for fun? Are you mission based and you don't expect any return on investment from this? You're really doing this to share content that you think is valuable. Or are you hoping, needing, wanting some sort of return on your investment, some ROI, right? So in the world of book publishing, it's very likely you're going to have to lay out money at a certain point in time. It could be to get the book published. It could be to improve your platform. It could be because you need personal development in a certain area. It could be because you need to hire an outside expert on a certain subject matter, but it's likely you're going to have to invest something. So the question is that would put you in, if you said, no way, I don't have any money to invest in this, that would help dictate kind of which form you're going towards a little bit, right? Then I go back to something, I forget who said it, Nicole or Lisa, but it's giving yourself permission to actually ask, what do you like doing and imagine doing? So if you hate writing and you're dreaming of doing a TED Talk, don't force yourself into another lane. Like, stay where you like to be. So I'd say so the first thing is, know your goals very clearly. What do you like to do and imagine doing? Two more, I would say quickly, is what are you willing to do? And this is not the financial piece of it. This is going back to that discomfort piece that I would try to push you over that hurdle. But if you're not willing, if the thought of going out and asking your network for help for anything or self-promoting in any degree makes you want to hide or get sick to your stomach, that would be an acid test. And then the last thing I would say, and this is, we haven't usually used these terms today, but it's kind of short form versus long form, right? So particularly in writing. So if you're someone, so it's kind of how established is your message already? So if you're somebody who's out there practicing your content every day, you're known for it. People tell you should write a book. You have to write a book. That to me would say you're further along in sort of testing out your message, and that would push you more towards long form writing, potentially, if that's a goal of yours. But if you're somebody who's really just sort of trying to figure out, how do I say this so it resonates with people, you're more in a test mode at that point. And I would say that pushes you more towards short form. But I'm not sure if that answers the question exactly, but that would be the thoughts I would have on it.
Nicole, how about you?
Yeah, I think I bring it back to the difference between content that's a product and content that's building platform. Two different kinds. My best advice is, if this is something you're embarking on, an adventure that you're excited to embark on, you should start with creating the types of content that build your audience. It's the saying I said when we had this panel meeting, if a tree falls in the woods and there's no one to hear it, does it make a sound? So if you spend all this time writing a book, which is content that's a product, right? And you don't have anyone to share it with, would that be disappointing to you, right? Or would just the very fact of completing a book be fulfilling? Mm-hmm. Only you can decide that, right? So if your purpose is to share that book, share that podcast, share that course, share that curriculum with the world, with people, with your city, your market, start with building your platform. Start with the types of content that are going to build an audience for you to talk to. And that's how you should think of it. Shouldn't think of it as promotion or sales. You should think of it as conversation. I'm building a community of people that I can talk to about this subject that we all find really interesting and compelling. And that's all that it is. And so I say, start with a social media presence and pick the social media platform that is the one that you prefer. If it's YouTube, if it's Instagram, if it's TikTok, if it's LinkedIn, if it's God only knows, there's a million of them now. But there are so many, and some are more video focused. So if you really prefer to be in front of the camera just talking, podcasting and YouTube and Instagram are probably for you. If you have a way with the written word, LinkedIn, Facebook. There are so many ways to incorporate both on all platforms, but pick the one that's the most enjoyable, that you actually don't make it. It doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like pain. It's actually cathartic and fun.
Thank you.
Lisa, what would you like to add?
Yeah, so we're talking about, factors to consider when you're deciding what platform to use to share your story: book, article, blog, newsletter, podcast, keynote, TED Talk, that sort of thing, right? So to jump off of what was already said, it's important to be clear on whether it's content you want to create or art, whether it's business or hobby. And if it's art or hobby, you're really not concerned with how it will be received. So that doesn't mean it can't end up having a big impact on other people. It just means that you're not concerned about it right now. You want to create a body of work on your own terms without worrying about how it will be received, which is different from if you have a business that you're trying to promote and you want to create content right now that people are interacting with to try to bring attention to your business. So those are different. And then also, just to pick up on a point Alicia made earlier, sometimes you're mission driven and you want to share freely, but I also think it's important. You want to think it through and make sure that you're sure that you really are mission driven, because sometimes you start sharing your story freely and then we get upset later when somebody takes it, jumps off of it, makes it into a business, makes a lot of money off of it. And you're like, I shared that already. Well, if you thought you were mission driven, but you're actually not, so you want to do that deep thinking about who you really are and what you really believe, so you're not later on resentful. So you want to think about that, all of those questions. Is it art? Is it hobby? Is it something I'm willing to give away for free? And so I have a framework called Circles of Sharing that helps helps people work through this, because there are some things we want to protect and there are some things we want to give away. And social media is essentially freebie stuff. Nothing's ever free, of course, but it's stuff you're willing to give. And you could get, public comments that might be critical, which if you have something that's really important to you, you may not be willing to put it out there. You may not want to hear criticism. Mm-hmm. It might be art that you want to protect and that you want to save for a platform over which you have much more control. And also, to the point, I think it's super important. It was brought up about what's natural and comfortable for you. So if you don't like to write, don't get yourself into a long form blogging commitment that you can't maintain. That's not sustainable for you. So you don't want to do that. But you can use the voice notes on your phone, for example, and record yourself talking. You can turn it into written content, right? You can turn it into written content. You can transcribe it, and you can be a different sort of writer. Maybe you don't like sitting down and writing at your computer or writing in a notebook, but you might like dictating content. So it's a different sort of writing, but you can later transcribe that and turn that into written content if your audience is engaging on a platform that prioritizes written content, like LinkedIn.
It's interesting because there's so much here to unpack in terms of, this journey that I think so many of us are on about how we want to share our stories and our life experiences, with the world. And I think it's important to keep that in mind, that it's a journey. It's not just a one conversation or, oh my God, I'm going to write do a podcast or a TED Talk. And there's so much to really take away, so many great nuggets of inspiration and action, I think, that has come out of this conversation.